Renaissance writers. Today we are going to be talking about 8 writing pieces that are just wonderful.
From the Renaissance period, from the 15th century, 14th century, and 13th century.
Starting off, we will have
the Inferno.
The Inferno is one of the 3 parts for the piece The Divine Comedy, or the Divina Commedia. This is written by Dante Alighieri, who was a major Italian poet of the late Middle Ages. He was born in 1265 to a family with a history of involvement in the Florentine political scene. One of his other pieces are the Vita Nuova, or the new life for his lost love Beatrice. The 3 sections of the Divine Comedy represent the tiers of the Christian afterlife: purgatory, heaven, and hell. Here is an excerpt of the piece.
Through me, you pass to the city of woe. Through me, you pass into eternal pain. Through me, among the people lost for aye. Just as the wonder of my fabric moved, to rear me was the task of power divine, supremest wisdom and primeval love. This means that Dante, following Virgil, comes to the gate of hell, where after having read the dreadful words that are written thereon, they bothered enter. Here is an understand from Virgil those were punished who had passed their time for living it could not be called in a state of apathy and indifference both to good and evil.
Then pursuing their way, they arrive at the river of Acheron, and there find the old ferryman Charon, who takes the spirits over to the opposite shore, which as soon as Dante reaches, he is seized with terror and falls into a trance. This embodies the Renaissance because back then people were obsessed with the afterlife. Many writers love to write in their pieces how the afterlife was like and how it looked, and what you have to do in life to end up there.
The influence this piece has on the world was very huge, not just literate but art too. British artist Tom Phillips illustrated his own translations of the Inferno, published in 1985, then full illustrations per canto. Many other artists made pieces for the different works in the collected piece.
And that is the Inferno. The next writing we have is the Il Canzoniere. The Il Canzoniere, which is also known as the Rhymes Farce, is a book of 366 poems. The main theme is about the poet's love for Lara, a woman Petrarch allegedly met on April 6, 1327. In the church of St. Clare in Avignon, the author Petrarch is an Italian scholar and poet in Renaissance Italy, and one of the earliest humanists. Petrarch's discovery of Cicero's letters is often credited with the initiating of 14th century Renaissance. Now our friend Dana will come in to say an excerpt.
Let the beautiful laurel grow so on the green bank, and let him who planted it in the sweet shade write lofty and joyful thoughts to the sound of water. Petrarch, Canzoniere, Sonnet 148.
This means that he wants his love for Laura to flourish on and grow. He also is saying to let him enjoy writing and think about her. This embodies the Renaissance because back then many writers would write about their feelings and lost love or people who don't love them back. The influence these poems have was on the rhyme scheme for later times. For instance, in 1380, Chaucer adopted part of Canzoniere to form 3 stanzas of rhyme royal and Troilus and Crusade, Book 1. And this is Il Canzoniere. The Oration of Dignity of Man is a famous public discourse pronounced in 1486 by Pico della Mirandola, an Italian scholar and philosopher of the Renaissance. It has been called the Manifesto of the Renaissance. This discourse is about the dignity of the liberal arts and about the dignity of the glory of angels. Of these angels, he spoke of 3 divisions in particular: the seraphim, the cherubim, and the thrones. There are the top 3 choirs in the angel hierarchy, each one embodying a different virtue. The seraphim represents charity in order to obtain the status of seraphim. The cherubim represent intelligence. This status is obtained through contemplation and meditation. Finally, thrones represents justice, and this is obtained by just in ruling over inferior things. Of these three, the thrones is the lowest, cherubim in the middle, and seraphim in the highest.
At last, the Supreme Maker decreed that this creature, to whom he could give nothing wholly his own, should have a share in the particular endowment of every other creature. Taking man, therefore, this creature of indeterminate image, he set him in the middle of the world, and thus spoke to him.
This means that even though this creature was not made by himself, the creature should be able to be shown the same equality as the others. This embodies the Renaissance because in those times, there was not a lot of human value. Kings and queens did not really care about the lower class and did not make an effort to care about the well-being of their people. The oration of the dignity of man speech influenced the people to start thinking of each other and how to treat each other. The next piece we have is the Decameron. The Decameron is a collection of novellas by the 14th century Italian author Giovanni Boccaccio. The book is structured as a frame story containing 100 tales told by a group of 7 young women and 3 young men sheltering in a secluded villa just outside Florence to escape the Black Death, which was afflicting the city. To pass the evenings, every member of the party tells a story each night, except for 1 day per week for chores, and the holy days in which they do not work at all, resulting in 10 nights of storytelling over the course of two weeks. Boccaccio conceived the Decameron after the epidemic of 1348 and completed it by 1353. Giovanni Boccaccio was an Italian writer, poet, correspondent of Plutarch, and an important humanist.
That the years of the beatific incarnation of the Son of God had reached a tale of 1,348 when the illustrious city of Florence, the fairest of all the cities of Italy, there made its appearance, that the deadly pestilence which whether disseminated by the influence of the celestial bodies or sent upon us, mortals by God in his just wrath by way of retribution for our iniquities, had its origin some years before in the East, whence after destroying an innumerable multitude of living beings, it had propagated itself without respite from place to place, and so calamitously had spread into the West.
So this means it is a detailed description of life in the Middle Ages, specifically the effects of the Black Death or the bubonic plague. This embodies the Renaissance because in 1346, a bubonic plague named the Black Death. The Black Death was one of the most devastating pandemics in human history, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 75 to 200 million people in Eurasia, and peaking in Europe in the years 1346 to 1353. The Decameron influenced the world because it explained in detail what a huge impact the Black Death had on the world at that time.
Now we're going to our commercials.
The Renaissance Writers would like to take this time thanking our sponsors who are the Italian banking family, political dynasty, and later royal house that first began to gather prominence under Cosimo de' Medici. In the Republic of Florence during the first half of the 15th century. The family originated in the Mugello region of the Tuscan countryside, gradually rising until they were unable to find the Medici Bank. The bank is the largest in Europe during the 15th century, seeing the Medici gain political power and influence, though officially they remain citizens rather than monarchs.
Do you hate vegetables and never know what to do with them? Well, here is one artist who has created a very unique way to use them. For just $50, you are able to buy up the piece for toneless. It uses all the vegetables on your plate and transform it into a beautiful art piece. So call 1-800-VERTUMNUS. Yes, that's right, 1-800-VERTUMNUS to purchase it right now.
Before we get back to the show, Renaissance writers would like to thank the Savoia family, who was ruling family of Renaissance Italy based in Milan. They acquired the Duchy of Milan from previously ruling Visconti family in the mid-15th century. Rising from rural nobility, the Savoias became condottieri and used this military position to become rulers of Milan. The family governed by force, ruse, and power politics, similar to the Medici in Florence. The Prince is a 16th century political treatise by Italian diplomat and political theorist Niccolo Machiavelli. Although it's relatively short, the treatise is the most remembered of Machiavelli's works and one most responsible for bringing the word Machiavellian into usage as a pejorative. It even contributes to the modern negative connotations of the word politicals and politician in Western countries. Niccolo Machiavelli was an Italian Renaissance historian, politician, diplomat, philosopher, humanist, and writer. He was often called the founder of modern political sciences. He was for many years a senior official in Florentine Republic with responsibilities in diplomatic and military affairs. He also wrote comedies, carnival songs, and poetry.
Here is an expert from the Prince.
At this point, one may note that the men must be either pampered or annihilated to avenge light offenses. They cannot avert severe ones. Hence, the harm one does to a man must be such as obviate any fear of revenge.
A prince must realize that he has two options, benevolence and destruction, because the latter option will cause resentment among the people. He should choose it only if he is absolutely sure there is no ill consequences, that the destruction he incurs will eliminate or disable any parties that might seek revenge to themselves or against him. Feelings of pity or compassion are meaningless. Self-interest and self-protection are in this case the motivating factors and are to be pursued ruthlessly.
Values of secularism and realism. The Prince directly contradicts a huge number of church teachings. Secularism, he essentially argues that for rulers attempting to keep their states united, the ends justify the means. The Prince influences the world because it convinces many rulers that people have a natural right to self-government.
The Book of Courtier is a courtesy book. It is written by Baldassare Castiglione over the course of many years, beginning in 1508 and published in 1528 by the Aldine Press in Venice, just before his death. It addresses the constitution of a perfect courtier, and in its last installment, a perfect lady. Baldassare Castiglione, Count of Castico, was an Italian courtier, diplomat, soldier, and a prominent Renaissance author. The book is organized as a series of fictional conversations that occur between the courtiers of the Duke of Urbino in 1507. In the book, the courtier is described as having a cool mind, a good voice, along with proper bearing and gestures. At the same time, though, the courtier is expected to have a warrior spirit, to be athletic and have good knowledge of the humanities, classics and fine arts. Over the course of 4 evenings, members of the court try to describe the perfect gentleman of the court. In the process, they debate the nature of nobility, humor, woman, and love.
This is an excerpt from the book. Before we launch into this subject, the Count replied, I should like us to discuss something else again which, since I consider is highly important, I think our courtier should certainly not neglect. This is the question of drawing of the art painting itself, and do not be surprised that I demand this ability, even if nowadays it may appear mechanical and hardly suited to a gentleman. For I recall having read that in the ancient world, and in Greece especially, children or gentle birth were required to learn painting at school as a worthy and necessary accomplishment, and it was ranked among the foremost of liberal arts. Subsequently, a public law was passed forbidding it to be taught to slaves.
Castiglione's work describes the ideal qualities of a courtier, a role he had had himself. The book takes the form of 4 conversations over 4 nights at the court of Urbino. The dialogues are fiction, but the speakers are historical persons. The count, who speaks below, was Ludovico da Canossa.
This embodies the Renaissance because in those times, kings were worried about the knights killing all of their subjects. So they created these rules of mannerism so that knights would have better manners. This influenced the world because knights caused less trouble on the peasants. It also started what we call today manners.
Canterbury Tales is a collection of 24 stories that runs to over 17,000 lines, written in Middle English by Geoffrey Chaucer. Geoffrey Chaucer, known as the father of English literature, is widely considered the greatest English poet of the Middle Ages, and was the first poet to be buried in Poets' Corner of Westminster Abbey, while he achieved fame during his lifetime as an author, philosopher, astronomer, composing a scientific treatise on the astronomy for his 10-year-old son, Louis Chaucer. Also maintained an active career in the civil service as bureaucrat, courtier, and diplomat. He uses the tales and description of its characters to paint an ironic and critical portrait of English society at the time, and particularly of the church. Chaucer's also such a wide range of classes and types of people was without precedent in English. Although the characters are fictional, they still offer a variety of insights into customs and practices of this time. Often such insight leads to a variety of discussion and disagreements among people in the 14th century.
Here is an excerpt from Canterbury Tales. Once upon a time, old stories tell us, there was a duke whose name was Theseus of Athens. He was a lord and governor, and in his time was such a conqueror, that none was greater underneath the sun. So many wealthy countries he won. What with his wisdom and his chivalry, he conquered all the realm of Femini, which then was known as Scythia, and married the queen named Hippocratia, whom he carried back home with him amid much pageantry and glorious ceremony. Emily, her younger sister, also went along, and so in victory a glorious song. I lead this noble duke as he is bound for Athens with his warriors all around. And if there weren't so much to hear, I now would fully have related for you how that land was won, the realm of Femini, by Theseus and by his chivalry. I tell you of the battle that was waged, as Athens and the Amazons engaged, and of the siege in which was finally seen defeat for Scythia's fair and hardy queen, and of the feast upon their wedding day, and the rousing welcome home. But as I say, I must forbear describing all that now.
The meaning of this excerpt is, long ago in ancient Greece, a great conqueror and duke named Theseus ruled the city of Athens. One day, 4 women kneel in front of Theseus' horse and leap, halting his passage into the city. The eldest woman informs him that they are grieving the loss of their husband, who were killed at the siege of the city of Thebes. Creon, the lord of Thebes, had dishonored them by refusing to cremate their bodies. Enraged at the lady's plight, Theseus marches on Thebes, which he easily conquers. After returning the bones of their husbands to the 4 women for the funeral rites, Theseus discovers 2 wounded enemy soldiers lying on the battlefield nearing death. Rather than kill them, he mercifully heals the Theban soldiers' injuries, but condemns them to a life of imprisonment in the Athenian tower.
This embodies the Renaissance because during this time, Europeans were obsessed with Greek mythology and the battles and mannerisms of the Greek people. The Canterbury Tales' influence on English literature is a somewhat satirical framed narrative of English society at the time of its creation. Chaucer is believed to have taken the inspiration from the Decameron, a medieval allegorical piece of literature. However, an important distinction is that Chaucer uses the depiction of soldiery folk, or everyday people, rather than respected nobles. This is significant because during this time, English was looked down upon. Society was diglossic, French being reserved for the high code of the nobility. English was viewed as an incapable language that lacked beauty and flow, as such was suitable only for the incipient. However, Chaucer's writing was elegant, it was poetic, and it demonstrated just what English was capable of. It showed the people at a time when French and Latin were the only languages used for art, and that English had significant power as well.
Utopia is a work of fiction and political philosophy by Thomas More, published in 1516 in Latin. This book is a framed narrative primarily depicting a fictional island society and its religions, social and political customs. Many aspects of More's description of Utopia are reminiscent of life in monasteries. Thomas More was an English lawyer and of life in monasteries. Social philosopher. Okay. English lawyer, social philosopher, author, statesman, and noted Renaissance humanist. He is also a counselor to Henry VIII, the Lord High Chancellor of England from October 1529 to 16 May 1532. He also wrote Utopia, published in 1516, about political system of an imaginary ideal island nation. The first book tells of the traveler Raphael Hypsipylas, to whom More, Council of Prince, a popular topic at the time. The first discussion, the Raphael allowed to discuss some of the modern ills affecting Europe, such as tendency of kings to start wars and the subsequent loss of money on futile endeavors. He also criticized that use of execution punished theft, saying thieves might as well murder whom they rob. To remove witnesses, and the punishment is going to be the same. He lays most of the problems on theft on the practice of enclosure. The enclosing of common land is the subsequent poverty and starvation of who are denied access to land because of sheep farming.
The island of Utopia. Here is an excerpt from Utopia. The island of Utopia is 200 miles broad in the middle and over a great part of it. But grows. I'll start again. The island of Utopia is 200 miles broad in the middle and over a great part of it, but grows nearer at the end. The figure of it is not unlike a crescent. 11 miles breadth the sea washeth its horns and formeth a considerable bay, encompassed by a shore about 500 miles in extent, and well sheltered storms. In the bay is no great current. The whole coast is as it were a continued harbor, affording the whole island every advantage of mutual intercourse. Yet the entrance into the bay, owing to rocks and shoals, is very dangerous.
In the middle of the rock is which appeareth above water, on whose top is tower inhabited by garrison. This other rock lie under water, and the other very dangerous. The channel is known only by the natives, and a stranger entering the bay without one of their pilots would be imminent danger of shipwreck. Themselves could not pass in its safety, without certain marks on the coast and direct to their way, and if these were a little altered any fleet coming against them, however large, would certainly be lost. On the other side of the island are likewise many harbors, and the coast is so fortified by nature as well as art that a small force would hinder the descent of a large army.
This means, the meaning of this describes the island Utopia and where it is located. It describes the different objects on this island and the danger it holds. Utopia is in many respects a typical product of Renaissance humanism. Utopia bears all the signs of a humanist interest in the classical languages and forms like Eramus. The praise of folly and violence on the true and false good was preoccupied with ancient philosophical views on ethnical values. Utopia influences on literature is big because it inspired other great writers to think about what life would be like in a perfect world. So this ends our episode of Renaissance Writers.